Hey, thanks so much for making time. I know that you're so busy on a press tour.
Some of the biggest things in my life have happened from just saying yes and being available.
Hey everyone, thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of Reppin. I'm Evelyn, your host. So this podcast, it's a unique blend of Hollywood insights and real-life lessons, offering universal wisdom for navigating the entertainment industry and, really, life in general. The goal is to foster positivity, equity, unity, and of course, integrity, all the while having a great time. So picture this, an internationally renowned drummer who's graced stages all over the globe, sharing the spotlight with icons like Lenny Kravitz, Bobby Brown, Lisa Marie Presley, New Edition, to Philip Bailey of Earth, Wind & Fire. Yes, he is a musical virtuoso, but there's so much more beneath the surface. As the fatherless biracial child of a Mexican immigrant, my guest was never expected to amount to much. Before the age of 9, his single mother had moved her 7 children more than 30 times, from the streets of South Central Los Angeles to rural Oregon. Sometimes there was no home to go to, and their dinner was a slice of bread. But through all of that darkness was the hope of a devoted mother. He's sharing all of this in his new book, titled Maria's Scarf, a memoir of a mother's love, a son's perseverance, and dreaming big. He's sharing how he ultimately channeled his pain, transforming himself from Danny Donnelly into Zorro, one of the world's greatest drummers. Zorro, first of all, thank you so much for joining me on the show. You look great. And let me just say this. I'm in New York City. You're on the West Coast. So you're up, obviously, way earlier than me. And you look way more put together than me.
Well, I had this outfit ready from last night because I was at an event. So I just said, I'll leave that hanging up. Because I'm very meticulous about what I pick out to wear. So it takes me a minute. I don't know if you noticed, but...
Oh, I could see. You match your cross.
Yeah, the cross has got like a pink hue.
It's literally perfectly matched. Yeah.
Seeing how I had that outfit already together, I'm like, well, nobody saw me in this outfit. So otherwise it takes me time because there's so many choices to make.
I appreciate the effort. Thank you so much. I wanted to talk to you because in the music industry and around the world, you are one of the most respected drummers. You've played with major, major talent like Lenny Kravitz, Frankie Valli, Bobby Brown. The thing that I find really fascinating about you is not only your resume, but after reading your book, which was a fantastic book, Maria's Scarf, a memoir of a mother's love, a son's perseverance, and dreaming big, what I found you to be actually more of is a philosopher.
You're on to me.
I'm somewhat on to you. Tell me a little bit about this book. I read the book and I loved it because there were so many universal experiences and lessons that you have learned and earned the hard way. And it didn't make you a bitter man. You actually turned all of these incredibly difficult challenges, like being very poor, being an immigrant, into such a positive philosophy. Can you tell me a little bit more about why you named it Maria's Scarf? It is such an open love letter to your mom. Tell me a little bit more about the book and why you wanted to write it.
I'll tackle the philosophy thing, and then I'll go into the book. In life, everybody experiences hardship. It's just different kinds. Some people have it more difficult than others, but there's nobody that escapes without some sort of hardship. But true, some go through much more brutal things. There's an old proverb, Proverbs 4:23, and it's something my mother used to read to me. Above all else, guard your heart, for from it springs forth the issues of life. So basically what that means is that every challenge we're going to have in our life is going to be an issue of the heart. An issue of hatred, an issue of jealousy, an issue of revenge, an issue of love, grace, everything that you're going to struggle with in your life and how you respond to it is going to be an issue that flows out of your heart. And so it means guard your heart because we are the gatekeepers of our heart In other words, things happen to all of us, and we don't have any power over what happens to us. We just have power over how we respond to it. And I have found that by responding with grace, by responding with love, by responding with positivity, by not going into the woe is me and the rest of the world, that I have the power to make that choice to stay positive, to speak positive words into my future. I learned that from my mother because she was a person who was challenged all the way around in her life. But I saw she had this resilient spirit and this faith and this attitude of perseverance and this attitude of gratitude. Not that you're thankful for the bad things that happened to you, but you're always thankful that somehow God seems to make a way to get through them and out of them. No one in this life is exempt from the challenges of being human, right? So I guess I've guarded my heart. I've guarded myself from being bitter or jaded. I've guarded myself from trying to get even with people that hurt or wronged me all throughout my life, which have been many, just like anyone else listening. I've guarded my heart in terms of still remaining a dreamer that is hopeful for things, even though the circumstances look like it's not going to happen. So you can get bitter and jaded and go, oh, nothing good ever happens. I'm still the same kid on the cover of the book with my mother. I'm a 7-year-old kid in that picture, but I'm still the same inside because kids start off with this beautiful heart, right? There's an Earth, Wind, and Fire song called That's the Way of the World. And I used to play it with those guys and Philip Bailey, the lead singer. The song's called That's the Way of the World. There's a lyric in there that says, child is born with a heart of gold, but the way of the world makes his heart grow cold. It's such a poignant line because it's like, yes, children are born with this beautiful heart. They're dreamers. They dream of amazing, fantastic things. And the way of the world gets in there and it crushes that. So what I've done is put a force field around that childlike heart that I don't let anybody come in there and tell me that my dreams are too big or too fantastic or that I'm not capable of this or that. And so I protected that childlike faith. I protected that childlike whimsy, that sense of wonder to where I'm still amazed at everything. And I'm still amazed when I see the leaves changing. And so that's part of the philosophy. And that is all by choice because we can all choose to be happy, positive, or bitter. And I also just see my life as an extension of service. To me, like you only really have two ways to live your life. You either live a life of self or you live a life of service. If you live a life of self, you'll self-destruct. But if you live a life of service, meaning you view your life in a way that how can I use my life to better humanity, to serve people, then you find the joy in living. So that's a little bit about the philosophy of how I've been able to maintain a positive outlook when there's not been anything to be positive about. Now, getting into the book, first of all, the title, Maria's Scarf. My mother's name was Maria, and there's a story about the scarf, and I wear scarves in her honor.
And I'm going to get to that, yeah.
Yeah. I wanted something poetic that just immediately evokes this beautiful story of what it is. And I wanted something intriguing and mysterious, like who's Maria and what's the deal with the scarf, right? I thought nothing would be better than her name. And then the scarf is something that symbolizes our unbreakable bond between mother and son and her love as she wrapped that scarf around me. So I ran that title by lots of people and everybody loved it.
I mean, you've opened so many doors right there, just setting all of that up. I do want to hear a little bit about a particular challenge. They cemented this lifestyle of creating a force field around the heart. But before we get to that, it is a terrific book. This is my own personal opinion. I'm speaking in general. But I do think it's rare that you find men in general in society that are openly willing to be vulnerable, emotional, be able to express all of that. So there's 3 parts to that right there. And you have this beautiful open love letter, really recognizing and celebrating your mother and your relationship with her. Secondly, the story that I wanted to kind of note, your trademark, so to speak, is these scarves that you wear around your neck. I mean, I've seen performances where you're like performing with Lenny Kravitz and you're basically sweating and shirtless and you've got a scarf on. I think the story that really got to me, one of the many, The story that you shared is you were taking a class photo. You were a really little kid, and you asked your mother if you could wear her scarf, her handkerchief. And your mom said to you that kids would make fun of you. But you actually pushed back and you said, well, Elvis Presley wears it and Tom Jones wears it. Like, I don't care if anyone makes fun of me. Dude, how old are you? You're like 8?
7 or 8, yeah.
Yes, you were 7 or 8. Can you set up what was happening in that moment and why that was such a profound insight to say, I don't care what other people think about me. This is what I want to do. Tell me a little bit about why that moment was so big.
For one, I think it was a life-altering moment in that when my mother knelt down to me, the second part of that story is she finally relented and let me wear her orange silk scarf. And when she did, she whispered in my ear and she said, one day, my precious son, you'll do something phantasmical with your life. And that was the word she used, phantasmical. It was a mix. She was Mexican and she spoke English, but that was kind of her mixture, confused word between fantastic and amazing. And she just said phantasmical. And so I think just by her saying that, and metaphorically, she was passing the torch from one generation on to the next. She was letting me know that the decision that I'd made to be different was going to transpire into something that one day would be phantasmical, because I guess it took courage to do that. And there's a part of anyone who's truly an artist, there's a peacock in every artistic person, which is they want to stand out and look different. Otherwise, they wouldn't be attracted to being an artist on stage, because they don't look like accountants or lawyers, because there's something in them that wants to be flamboyant, because there's something in there that wants to express who they are.
I don't know many people who aspire to look like an accountant.
Maybe accountants do.
True.
Because they want to look all business. But musicians, at the time, I didn't know that I would become a musician, but I had this artistic bent. It's like this Dr. Seuss quote that says, why fit in when you were born to stand out? And I believe that everybody is different, right? But we conform to this idea that we have to be this cookie cutter thing to fit in. And I guess because I was already rejected by my own father, and we even by that age had already had a difficult life, I guess that gave me some resilience that maybe another 7 or 8-year-old wouldn't have had, because the rejection, the abandonment, the moving around constantly, it built up within me some chutzpah, some spine, some backbone, some courage that I don't think would have come if my life had already been easy by that point. Then there's that part where you just want to draw attention to yourself because of the artistic nature that's inside of you. Because why do you write books? Why do you create poems? Why do you do movies? Why do you create music? You create it because, number one, it's a creative expression, but it draws attention to yourself. That's why artists are artists. So I think it was just sort of intuitive. I know why today, why I play and why everything I do matters with the utmost. It's not to prove anything to anybody. It's never to be better than anybody. But what I realize is, because of the desperation of my childhood, what that birthed inside me was this: everything mattered. And whatever I do, I'm going to do it the best I can do. Not the best to beat anybody else, because there's no such thing as writing a better memoir than another great memoir. They're just different. Yes, they call me whatever, one of the world's greatest drummers, but I would say one of, because there's hundreds of thousands of great drummers. I'm considered one of them, which is a great honor. But there's nobody who's better than the next guy, because it's a different expression. It's your way of playing. To me, my desire was always to be the most excellent at what the gifts I was given. Meaning, the way I look at it is, God is the originator of the gift. Basically, mankind, we create nothing. We don't create a single thing. What we do is we construct from the elements that are already there. For instance, if you look at this jewelry of mine, the guy who put this stone together, he didn't create the stone. He didn't create the silver. He just took with the elements that were already in the universe, put them together with his creative spirit, and made this. But so what we do is we construct from what is already there. The way I looked at it is my gift of drumming and writing and speaking and teaching were already in me the day I was born. And what I do is discover them, and I construct things from those elements that are already there. So part of my desire to be excellent at things is, in a way, to honor this gift that I was given, to turn it into more, because every gift that God gives to mankind, he gives to them in the form of a seed of potential, meaning you have the potential to be a great doctor, the potential to be a great athlete, the potential to be a great musician, but you have to develop it. You have to cultivate it. So part of my desperation of my childhood is why I think everything matters. So when I play with all my heart. When I write with all my heart. When I teach, when I speak, like my heart is in every moment of it. I heard this great saying. It says, live each day as if it were your last.
Yeah.
And one day it will be true.
Hopefully not for a long, 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 long time.
But it will be true, right?
Yes, for all of us.
So live each day as if, hey, this might be the only time I get to play or perform or encourage, inspire somebody. That way, everything is intentional and everything matters, because it's this great opportunity to make a difference in the lives of other people through the gifting that was free to you anyway.
Well, there's many things that I could go to here, and I agree with you wholeheartedly, but I think, just personally speaking, I think sometimes the challenges that people forget is they don't exercise the superpower of choice and intention. They just sort of roll with it because there's so much chaos and just the struggle of trying to survive that they get lost in that. When I was reading your book and doing my research, one of the many seeds that God gave you was this very powerful sense of being able to be aware, being able to take all of these difficult experiences and sort of process them and spit them out in a more positive way. As a child, can you talk about one experience where you clocked within yourself that you were able to turn something negative into something positive? Because you had so many hardships, and your mom was a single mom, and you're an immigrant. Correct me if I'm wrong, Mexican and Irish background, correct?
Yeah.
There were 7 brothers and sisters. I think that outnumbers the Brady Bunch, right?
Especially without Mr. Brady.
Exactly.
That's what makes it harder.
Exactly. And being immigrants and not being able to, quote unquote, fit into a clean box of what you were, that added to more challenges in many ways. Can you share one early experience that you remember? What was the challenge you were facing, and how did you sort of turn that painful experience into a life lesson?
We grew up in Compton, California, in the hood, and we moved from Compton to a rural community in the backwoods of Oregon. The town was called Grants Pass. So that was a huge juxtaposition between like inner city life and this country bumpkin middle of nowhere, 20 ducks in the population.
You could have just gone to Guam.
Yeah, totally. And it was very difficult there, because that's kind of the first time I experienced racism, and the point where people didn't like you because of your Mexican background. I didn't really experience that so much in LA because it was more diverse. But when we moved there, I was, wow, people don't like you because of what my mother looked like or her Mexican accent or whatever. The challenge right away was how to be accepted and how to navigate the hostile hallways of elementary school, where kids can be very cruel and mean.
Yeah.
I was fortunate that the support that I had was the love of my mother and my siblings. We were a very tight family because we leaned on each other to survive. I don't think I would have survived without that insulation of, like, at least when I go home, I've got my brothers and sisters. I kept finding ways to survive and reinvent myself. So, for instance, this is just survival. When I first went to school in Grants Pass, Oregon, in elementary school, I was doing some dumpster diving, always looking for stuff. And I found this book, which I considered a treasure right away. It said Boys Judo. And in my mind, I had this wild imagination always from birth. I could just dream of these phantasmical things. So I saw that book, and in my mind, in the fourth grade, I was an immediate kung fu expert. And so I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm a kung fu expert now because I have the book. So we moved in the even more rural area. So I was going to a brand new school. So I knew that I had to set precedents at that school and not be bullied. So I immediately went to first grade and I told everybody that I was a black belt kung fu expert from LA. I said, if you mess with me, I'll take you down. Then I said, the entrepreneur in me said, but if you guys want to learn, I can teach you what I've learned from my masters. And I just named the guys who wrote the book. And I said, but I'll charge you 20 cents each. And so I literally, for almost a week, I had kids lining up. And what I would do is study the book the night before with my brother. And then the next day I go, these are what the lessons are. Then we'd take the mats down in the gymnasium. And I made $13 with my brother by the end of the week in quarters until the principal called me on the last day and busted my operation. But the whole point was that was where I realized life is about survival and you got to do what you got to do to survive. So I found ways of distinguishing myself, setting myself apart, but I also found that the value of like work. Shortly after that, I started doing all kinds of different odd jobs. And rather than sitting in the trailer and the tent or whatever, woe is me, I would get out there and hustle, figure out how to make money to support a vision that I had. And the visions changed all the time with age. You know, then I wanted to be the world's greatest chicken farmer. Then I started buying chicken. And I found that if I could pour myself into a vision and something positive that I can imagine myself doing, then that sort of got me past all the dark things that were going on because I was like a horse with blinders on. I had tunnel vision and all I could see was that goal. And that kept me from getting derailed by all the negativity or the not fitting in. And part of it is that quest to prove yourself. Well, I'll show you guys, you know what I mean? And so there are a bazillion success stories that are based on people who weren't valued when they were young from either their family or society. And they just decided, oh yeah, I'm going to show you. And I was definitely one of them, but I had a determination. I'll never know if it was just God breathed or was it partly from my circumstances, maybe a little of both, but that's enabled me to kind of navigate the dark hallways of school, rejection, abandonment, racism, bullying. I focused on doing something positive that I could overcome this thing. Otherwise, you stew on the negativity and you become crippled and paralyzed and you don't do anything except want to shoot people and hate people. And I was protected by a mother who had vision. Vision is probably the biggest thing for people. If you don't have a vision, then all those things can destroy you because you don't really know where you're headed. So a wave came and then you just got taken under, as opposed to like, yeah, the waves are coming, but I see an island over there and I'm trying to make my way to that island. You know, if you're not making a way towards something, I could see how people get swallowed up.
You talked a lot about abandonment issues, immigrant problems, but I think there's also an immigrant work ethic too, where you like have to do everything 10 times better than the next person because you're a quote unquote immigrant or an other. I know because I'm also a daughter of immigrant parents. So I think that work ethic is drilled into us that we need to work that much harder to survive. Here's where I'll challenge you, Zorro. And I think that the delicate balance between doing everything that you can to survive, right? That's a very delicate fish line almost that you have to walk because you could have let that ambition drive you where you could have stopped at nothing to succeed and get to where your goals were.
Right.
Or you could say, okay, this is where I want to go, but I'm not going to hurt anybody while I'm doing it and make sure I'm driving my ambition.
Yeah.
And I think that balance between letting that survival instinct of I will do anything to survive consume you and undertake you, or make sure that you're sort of that, lack of a better word, that beast where you'll do anything to survive. You have that in sight,
right?
But you also know, like,
you have a conscience to not.
There's a good way, like a moral barometer that you have to work within or want to. That's the key, want.
Yeah.
I think that line is extremely fine, and it's always a balancing act. And with your abandonment issues, with moving from Compton to like a land where there's like ducks walking around the street,
Yeah.
a single mother for 7 kids. But even as a kid, you had that strong moral barometer. When did you sort of clock that you had this?
I always had a tender heart. I would say it's probably because my mother had a tender heart, and she was tough and tenacious on one side, but then on another side, she had this beautifully warm and tender heart. So just from being around her, and my life was very different than most kids in the sense that most kids that I grew up with and most people that I know, they grew up with 4 possible grandparents, right? Most kids have uncles and aunts, and most kids have cousins. Well, I grew up without any of those. Out of the 4 possible grandparents, I had no relationship with any of them. And then no relationship with uncles or aunts. They were in Mexico City. And the Irish people were in Chicago. They didn't want anything to do with me. So literally, I only grew up with a mother and my siblings. Most Mexican families have all kinds of extended family, except ours was in Mexico City and we couldn't afford to go there. Everything that I learned about life, I learned from my mother and then my older siblings. And my mother, she had faith in God and she had a moral code and compass. Most of life, it's taught by example. They live it before you and then you sort of imitate it or not if you choose not to. There was a point when I was 14 and I went to this summer camp, and it was a Christian summer camp where they send underprivileged boys who can't afford to go. And it's a lot of kids from broken homes, foster kids and stuff. And it's a week in the mountains in around Ashland, Oregon, just the most beautiful, serene setting. There I was around young men that were probably in their 20s, maybe 30s, but they seem like old men to me when you're 12, 13. Your perspective is so skewed. That week that I was with them, they just sort of loved on all of us. They mentored us and they taught us and they led by example. And that was like a turning point for me because I felt that's the kind of person I want to become. Like these guys, like they were loving, they were kind, they were God-fearing, they had a moral code, they had a work ethic, and they were pouring into us young, broken kids. Because if they hadn't, who knows, half those kids could have turned into criminals. Our lives change in seconds with the right influence, either negative or positive. Our lives are really in the moments, not in the hours and the weeks and the years, but literally in the moments where you encounter somebody who's going to influence you in a bad way or influence you in a good way. And my mother had enough sense to go, hey, my kids need some guidance and mentoring besides just me being a mother with her hands full. And she also signed us up for the Big Brother, Big Sister program. So we had a big brother, big sister in our lives that loved on us, mentored us. And so I think my code of morality, even though I had a survivor in me, I was never going to do anything that hurt anybody in order to maintain my survival.
I think what's interesting, and I love what you said, and I sort of wanted to highlight that, is like your life can change in the moments. And I believe, and I try to live my life this way, is like the things that make life special isn't sort of the big events. It's the smaller everyday events that we may not even clock.
Yeah.
And I love that you brought all this up. Earlier in the conversation, you had said you wanted to build a force field around your heart to protect your childlike heart. But it's so freaking hard, Zorro. It's not like you can go to Home Depot and just buy stuff and just like clamp it down. And I think everyone, it doesn't matter who you are, what you look like. If you're human and you have breath in your body, surviving in this very complicated and getting more chaotic world, it's really hard. And it's hard to be intentional when you're working so furiously to survive. You just do whatever it is because you don't have the bandwidth. It's hard enough to do this on a day-to-day basis, but for anybody that's not in entertainment, the entertainment industry is like a magnification of everything. It's like going from a sit-down restaurant where you have plentiful food, right? And you're just trying to keep up with the amount of food on your plate to going to a buffet. Everything in entertainment is just so much bigger and so much more. When you're in that world, and you certainly are in that front and center, being a musician, being an artist, it's hard to not get caught up in the excess that's available to you. And that's not just always the good things. It is harder, I imagine, for you to keep that force field around your heart. When was the earliest moment where you learned to protect your heart? How did you protect it?
The more you walk with grace towards humanity, the less bitter your heart will get jaded, because the more you realize that humanity is broken and fractured, and that everybody is suffering and everybody's messed up and everybody's self-centered, then the easier it is to go, that's just what it is to be human. I lower my expectations of people so that you don't get let down as easily. We can get so broken and bent when somebody that we know doesn't invite us to something, or they didn't include us in something, or they didn't mention us in something, or whatever it pertains to you. I just give people more grace to make the mistakes, to be human, that then it takes away sort of any bitterness that I could have towards them. And also knowing that people are struggling with way more inside than they ever reveal outside. When you walk around New York City, you walk around anywhere, even when you walk and meet old friends, and they'll say, "Hey, how you doing?" "Oh, I'm doing great." But no one's ever really doing that great. But they don't feel comfortable enough to tell you, my wife can't stand me, my kid doesn't talk to me. They're not going to go into it.
Yeah.
You have to develop compassion and empathy. And maybe because of all the hardships I've gone through has made me a more compassionate, empathetic person. Because honestly, we don't give a crud about people until we've gone through something. I remember when people would tell me they lost their mother or their father, and I would go, "Oh gosh, I'm so sorry." And I realized they were just polite words to say that were the society norm of courtesy, right? It wasn't that I was a mean person. It's just I had never experienced it.
You have no frame of reference.
I have no frame of reference, so it's just a courtesy. But when I lost my mother, which was the only parent that I had and the closest person in my life, I was devastated. Now, when somebody says I lost my mother or father, now I have empathy that I didn't have before. So it's when you go through your own painful trials that you develop more compassion and empathy, but you have to choose to use it.
Yes.
All of that to say that if I don't guard my heart, then I'm not as useful to God, meaning I just see myself as a servant to humanity, and I have a limited time to serve. It's like this, those ads that go, for a limited time only, you could get this and that, well, life is a limited time offer. It's literally a limited time offer. For a short amount of time, you are offered life. And my philosophy, as I understand it, the goal of your life is to do as much good as you can with all that you have for as long as you have to everyone that you come in contact with. And this is what keeps me guarding my heart. I see everything from an eternal perspective and not a temporal one. If I saw it from a temporal perspective, like most people, then you're just trying to eat as much of the buffet as you can, because you go, "Hey, I've got 60 years to do all this crap." So you're gonna be gluttonous in everything that you approach in your life, and you're gonna be self-absorbed and self-centered, and you're gonna go back to the buffet 12 times, and you're gonna be 9,000 pounds of unhealthy human existence because you haven't learned one of the fruits of the spirit, which is called self-control. The difference between humanity and animals is that human beings were given the power to self-govern themselves and have self-control. We can say yes and no. When a cheetah kills a gazelle in the Serengeti in Africa, they're not afterwards going to a 12-step program to talk about, "Hey, we shouldn't have really killed that gazelle. That was really wrong."
How do you know?
Well, I haven't seen it. My point is, human beings are the only creature that I believe God made with the capacity to get outside of yourself and examine your behavior and go, "I shouldn't have done that." We're the only ones that have remorse, where we can analyze our thoughts, go, I should have been kinder. I should have forgiven. That makes us very complex beings, because we've got this emotional capacity to make choices. And all those choices determine the outcome of our life. But more importantly, they determine the output of your life. So I think of things from an eternal perspective, knowing, hey, I'm here for a limited amount of time. I was given this amount of platform, this amount of talent. God's gift to me was what he gave me. My gift to God and humanity is what I did with it to inspire, encourage, affirm other
Yeah.
people. And everyone has a platform in life. They're just different. Celebrities have a bigger sphere of
Yeah.
influence. Preachers have a bigger sphere of influence. But I believe everyone will be judged according to what they were given. So, meaning I'm not going to be in judgment with some other guy who had 10 bazillion followers. Was I faithful with the plate that was in front of me? The people that I met
Yeah.
on the plane, the people that I worked with, just who's in front of me. So I see everything as like, I'm just trying to make a difference while I'm here. And I can do that with my words. I can do that with my drumming, but I don't even need any talent to do it. I can just do it by being nice everywhere I go. I always like to compliment people. If like I'm at a restaurant and somebody's doing a nice job, I'll say, you know what? I said, you really made my day. Your service was so excellent. It just really blessed my afternoon. You're amazing. Just giving a kind word of affirmation is like dropping water on a desert plant that hasn't seen rain in years. Because people are starving for encouragement, for affirmation, for love, for inspiration. And one of the other ways I guard my heart is by what I watch, read, and listen to. I look at our brain as the hard drive, and the software are the things that we import. So if you are hanging out with negative people, then you're importing negative things in you. So it's hard for something
Yeah.
positive to come out. So a lot of it is who you hang out with. A lot of it is what you allow yourself to read, watch, and listen to. I'm inspired by music, so I'll put on songs that inspire me to have a great heart. I'll put on songs that inspire me to dream. I got to pour more software in than the rest of society's trying to pour into me, because I'm the gatekeeper of the flux capacitor.
I love your reference. Yeah.
I'm the
Yeah.
gatekeeper. If I let stuff in, it's
Right.
because I let it in. But if I push stuff out, it's because I pushed it out. And I think the most powerful thing you can learn as a human being is that you have this incredible gift called self-control. And self-control can teach you to manage your emotions, can teach you to manage your reactions, can teach you to manage what you input and what you output. We have more control over situations than we think. In other words, you can choose to forgive your ex-spouse or your children, or, and forgiveness is never a feeling. Nobody ever deserves it, including us. But you go, if I do that, it's like I got to get out of jail free card. I'm the one who's free.
Yeah.
Because when you don't forgive, you're hanging on to this bitterness and chains and shackles, and you're the only one spewing and living this. The other person's going on with their life, and you're the
Yeah.
prisoner. So
Yeah.
these are all things that help me, because I have just as many bad things that have happened to me to be unforgiving towards other people as anyone else.
Yeah.
But I've chosen not to, because by that, I'm a free bird and I can soar and I can keep going and I can keep dreaming. But if I don't let it go, I become a prisoner and I can hardly go anywhere.
It's easier said than done.
Always.
But I will say this. I think a lot of what you're talking about is about liberation, personal liberation. And I think sometimes when and also consumption, because I think the brain, I love your metaphor of, this is the difference between us. You're talking about the brain like a hard drive, which is a much better comparison than my comparison, which is like your brain's like your stomach. If you're eating McDonald's all the time, you're just going to have a fat ass.
Yeah.
You are what you consume.
You're totally right.
And I think that's with your brain.
Exactly. Mentally, physically, and spiritually.
The thing that I try to practice, I say practice because I don't have it right. I do think that I am making a more conscious decision to exercise my power of choice, self-control, and intention and consumption. And I love that you're saying this because it's reinforcing the lesson and belief that I thought. It starts with consumption. And consumption isn't just about food. It's about who you are, what you choose to take in, who you allow in your life, and you share the gift of your time. Because time is a limited offer. And though I completely admit to gorging myself at a buffet, I do believe very much in being much more intentional about what I consume and choosing what it is. And that goes from everything from who you surround yourself with, what you read, and then figuring out, well, wait a second, who's telling me this? What's the source of the information? What's interesting is, despite your incredible challenges on every level, you have been able to liberate yourself and not be eaten out from the inside with hate. When did you think that began? Do you think that began with your mother leading by example?
Yes.
Because despite all of her challenges, she always remained warm and loving.
Yes, she did. There's a song she used to love. It's a beautiful song. It was called Rolling with the Flow by a man named Charlie Rich. And it was a beautiful song. And every time it comes on, I cry because I just think of her. The song was about all the punches in life that come and all the hardships. But he goes, I just keep on rolling with the flow. She just kept on rolling with the flow, and she kept a good attitude despite all those things. But she also taught me to consume the right things. For instance, to write this memoir, which was a lifelong vision, I read over 300 books in 15 years to study the craft of writing memoir. I had a vision of what I wanted to do, and I just consumed everything that it would take for me to stay positive about it. I had written other motivational books before Maria's Scarf, but the difference between a motivational book and a memoir is the difference between being like a pediatrician. Writing a memoir is like being a neurosurgeon. It's a whole higher level of writing. Just because you can do one doesn't mean you can do the other. People ask how long I've been working on the book. 50 years, because I started a diary at the age of 10 that I kept writing in through my 20s. So there are diary entries, as you read in the manuscript. Some of them will make you laugh. Some of them will make you cry. Some of them will get you angry. But I'm a kid writing my feelings. I'm not writing something thinking I'm going to have a memoir one day. I'm just writing the truth. You could say this book has been in the making for like 50 years. I would be remiss not to mention how much hard work it takes to fulfill a vision. And like a lot of people, now that they know the memoir is coming out, they'll just think, oh, well, he got a memoir deal. He got a book deal because he's Zorro and somebody wrote it for him. And they'll not know any of the truth behind it is that this manuscript was turned down over 100 times in 15 years by different publishers and agents. And me being Zorro didn't make them give me a publishing deal. Some things are in God's timing, and I am glad that it did not happen any earlier than when I wanted it to, because it took me this amount of years to learn how to write the craft the way that I eventually did in the book. It took me this long to be that open and honest and vulnerable, because now I'm looking back as a 61-year-old man, not a 45-year-old man. All of those things give me perspective, give me seasoning. I've never done anything in my life that I wasn't compelled to do. I don't do something because I go, oh, there's a niche in the market that's missing and I could fill it. I always did what I was compelled to do. I would have written all my book if nobody published them. I would continue playing drums if I never got a gig with anybody. I would continue mentoring and speaking at prisons and churches and conferences and business meetings if nobody paid me. The things that I do because I'm compelled to do them, because they're in my spirit to do. And it just so happens that because the motives were always pure, and then I put in 100,000 hours in everything I've done. 10,000, that's a long time ago. I put in 100,000 hours in writing my memoir and learning how to be a speaker and being a teacher. I put in hundreds of thousands of hours in pouring out my heart to give to people, to help them, to encourage them, to inspire them in my daily encounters as I go about life. So there's a part of us, there's the God part, which is the abilities that we naturally have that we can't earn. Like you can't earn musical talent. You either have it or you don't. You can't earn mathematical mind. You either have it or you don't.
I tried.
So there's the gift part, and things I try to be good at that I'm just not gifted at, right? So all you got to do in life is go, what are the things that come more natural to me than other people, and then develop that. So I was compelled to write Maria's Scarf because I wanted to honor the legacy of my mother. I wanted to honor my family, my siblings, that we were a beautiful family, that yes, we fought like all families do, but we fought for each other's survival. And I wanted to give people hope and inspiration that in the midst of the most desperate circumstances, to not give up on hope, because with love and with hard work and with patience and with faith, we can prevail against anything. So I figured, what's the best way I can inspire multitudes of people around the world that I'll never get to meet? They'll never see me at an event. There's only going to be so many one-on-ones I'm going to have with meeting people, only so many concerts, only so many speaking things. So I thought, if I write a book and show this amazing, powerful story of this mother's love, this unbreakable bond of a family, and this kid with a starry-eyed dream that he refuses to give up, those are universal themes, and they'll resonate. I actually feel the book is the most important thing I've ever done because it's everything that I've learned that could benefit someone else.
Yes.
There's this saying, mankind lives off of food, clothing, and shelter, right? We've heard that. Food, clothing, and shelter.
Yeah.
That's not entirely true. There's one element that we cannot survive without that no one ever talks about. Food, clothing, shelter, and story.
Yes.
It is stories
Yes.
that are imparted from
Yes.
one generation to the next, from cave drawings, from books, from biblical manuscripts, religious writings. Verbally, we cannot survive without story. The reason why we read books, watch movies, listen to podcasts, talk to people from the days of Plato to people sharing, things on stage to make people laugh. We survive from story. That's how we make sense of humanity. What we consume becomes eventually our story. So I used to watch every motivational, inspiring movie and collect them. And then I would go, I have a story that's equally as inspiring, if not better, than some of these movies that are moved. And that would inspire me to go, well, I'm going to write my story. This guy has a movie about his life, and it's not even as amazing as mine was. So I would get inspired. Someone was able to do that, and people do the same with my book. My whole thing with writing it was like, I wanted to honor mothers. I wanted to honor immigrants, and I wanted to honor dreamers and inspire all of these and the fathers that are good fathers and just give people hope and give them like a story that makes them really feel something deeply. And as an artist, I learned this as a drummer, and it was the same as a writer. We only have one job with your podcast, and you're a great interviewer, by the way.
Oh my God. Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Fantastic, deep questions. But all artists have the same job, to make people feel something deeply. And that was my goal in writing Maria's Scarf, was to make them feel. My mother comes alive in the pages of that book.
I sort of wanted to underscore something that you were saying. Yes, this is an absolute testament to you and your mom and your brothers. But I think what's interesting is that you said other people's story became your story, and you realized that you could do it too. And that is representation. And now you are also paying that forward. And I think that is your intentional choice, to pay it forward, but to serve it in a positive way. And I think you reframed something that society often overlooks, which is we live in such a patriarchal society, and we live in a world that defines masculinity as bravado.
Yeah.
What's also really clear to me, we hear about broken families. It's always like this downturn of hardships and horrible stories. And that's all true. But you frame it but also this is what came out of it. This is what I've learned. And I think all the experiences that you survived and you've transformed, they're absolutely applicable to any human being on any corner of the world. You don't meet many men who are openly okay with internally even talking about their emotions and vulnerabilities, because it's usually bravado that's categorized as strength.
Yeah.
Despite everything that you're going through and even the glamour and glitz of your current job as this incredible drummer and respected drummer, your vulnerability and your openness to understand and share and put language to your emotion, that's your strength. It feels like that's always been rooted deep into who you are, and you've just been able to flourish and be able to shape it and understand it and share it, which is really hard on every single level. Am I accurate on that?
Yeah, you're very, very much so. And you said something, and you're right. Most men, they'd hide their emotions, thinking that it's more manly to act like nothing bothers you or whatever. But the truth is, the most powerful force in the universe is not brute force. The most powerful force in the universe is love, and love is stronger than anything. And if men understood that, they wouldn't hide so much behind this false mask. It is stronger to express your love than to hide your love. As a leader, if you lead with love, man, the people that you touch as a leader who loves on people and who is honest and shares vulnerable moments, it's part of humanity. We all thrive off of love, and we exist from love. And if more men would put away that false idea of what that is, it doesn't make you strong to act like a jerk and like you don't have emotion. It makes you weak.
Yes.
Because what it makes you is not confident enough to be the full expression of who you're supposed to be. The most inspiring person in the world is the person who walks in their own skin and knows who they are and is unapologetic about being the full human that they are, because we've got all those full expressions, right?
Yeah.
So that's when you're powerful. I never wrote the book looking for the praise of people. I'm getting unexpected things where a woman recently read it and she sent it to somebody who chooses which authors get to speak at this very fancy shindig. And she said, he doesn't like many books, but it's a long shot, but I'll send him your book. And then he sent me an email like about a week later. He read the whole thing and he said, Zorro, he goes, your book, it is so beautiful, so powerful, so evocative, so emotional. We'd like to invite you to speak at this event and share your story. You know, and the reason why we share our stories is because it is through other people's stories that we find courage and we find hope and we find forgiveness and we find peace and restitution. Just like when we hear a song and the lyrics speak so clearly to like what we're feeling. For instance, this very simple song, right? Stevie Wonder, I just called to say I love you. Yeah. I mean, like how many bazillions of people in the world, you're just calling your people to say I love you. And that's a human thing throughout the entire globe, right? Of the 6 billion people, most of which have phones. I've been in the jungles of Ghana, Africa, where it looks like the Flintstones. They're wearing like the Flintstones native garb. And I saw these chiefs pull out cell phones. So I was like, okay, literally in a place where they're going, it's not even possible. And they got cell phones.
Meanwhile, I can't get cell service in my kitchen.
Well, yeah, but now you got to go to Africa. But the point is like, everybody just calls. I just call to say I love you. But he coined it in a song, and we all feel that. So there's these universal truths in the lyrics of songs, in the expressions in books, and we cry because we think of our mother or our father or our mentor or our person who loved on us. That's what I hope people get out of Maria's scarf. I hope it breaks down exterior walls where people are hardened.
Yeah.
I pray that it softens hearts and causes reconciliation between family members. I just hope it has an impact on people, on their hopes and on their dreams. We are most moved by things that touch our heart. And when you touch somebody's heart, they change.
So Zorro, let me know who you are and what you represent.
I am Zorro, a child of God, and I represent God's love for humanity and that anything is possible with love, perseverance, faith, and hope.
Thank you to Zorro for sharing his incredible journey with us, his story of resilience, perseverance, and the power of dreams. It is so inspirational. And it's a great reminder that with hope, determination, and unwavering faith, anything is possible. It's not easy, but possible. Be sure to pick up a copy of Zorro's book, Maria's Scarf, A Memoir of a Mother's Love, A Son's Perseverance, and Dreaming Big. I'll have all of the necessary links in the show description. So let me know what your thoughts are on this conversation and past ones. You can find me on Instagram at Reppin_podcast, and please check out my YouTube page at Reppin Podcast for exclusive content. This show is produced for us because it's about us. Help me build this community. All you got to do is share, subscribe, and download, and leave a review. Thank you to Nelson MacGyver Pinero. God, I hope you guys got that reference. For lending his time and talent. Appreciate you, Nelson. Reppin is a Suburban Outlaw Productions. Until next time, stand up and represent.